Are you quietly paying an extra 30, even 60% just because of the name printed on the package? You're about to see 13 Walmart store brand items that quietly beat out expensive name brands in texture, flavor, and everyday performance, plus 4 items you should stay away from no matter how cheap they are. You'd be awesome if you subscribed and liked this video. "13. Great value, shredded cheese, melts just as smooth as the name brands." You've probably stood in front of the cheese case at Walmart wondering if that bag of cheap shredded cheese is even worth buying. The answer shows up the moment it melts on a homemade pizza or gets sprinkled over a bowl of chili on a weeknight. Great value. Shredded cheese is cut just thick enough to hold on to its richness without clumping up or drying out the way some cheaper shreds have let you down before. When you bake the same cheesy bread recipe with both, it's tough to tell which one came from the big brand and which one was Walmart's own. An 8-ounce bag runs about $2.25, while the same weight from a well-known brand often runs past $4. If you make nachos on the weekend, this shredded cheese melts evenly in the microwave in just 30 seconds without separating and pooling grease on the plate the way some cheap shreds tend to. An 8-ounce bag stretches through about 5 meals for a family of 4, which works out to less than 50 cents a use. For a family cooking every day, that difference adds up to a real number by the end of the month, without any drop in how the meal actually tastes. 12. Great value paper towels, just as thick and absorbent as the heavily advertised brands. Paper towels are something you use once and throw away every day. So why pay a premium for something that only lasts a few seconds on the kitchen counter? Bounty and Viva have built entire ad campaigns around how sturdy their sheets are, but set a roll of great value next to them and wipe up the same greasy spill, and the absorbency is barely different. Great Value's sheets are woven thick. They don't tear when you wring them out gently, and they hold up through several wipes in a row without ripping apart mid-swipe, the way some cheaper rolls have made you reach for double the sheets. A standard roll usually runs about 120 sheets, enough for an average family for about 2 weeks of regular cleanup. Plenty of people have poured the same amount of water on both brands and let it sit for 5 seconds, and Great Value held its shape while some cheaper towels started falling apart in the middle. The nice part is, you don't have to choose between saving money and getting the job done, since both come in the same roll, priced 30 to 40% lower than the name brand competitors. 11. Great value. Large eggs, fresh and reliable for just 75 cents. Eggs are one of the strangest items on the grocery shelf, where pretty packaging and big organic lettering can triple the price while the quality inside is nearly identical. Great value. Large eggs come packed fresh with sturdy shells and rich colored yolks, and in blind taste tests, plenty of shoppers have tried them at home. Most people can't tell the difference between the regular eggs and the ones with the premium label. They run about 75 cents an egg on average per carton, while organic or free-range eggs of the same size often cost double or triple that. A dozen large eggs delivers about 7 grams of protein per egg, nearly identical to the pricier organic eggs despite the big gap in cost. If you've ever fried 2 eggs side by side in the same pan, the yolk color and the way the whites set up when cooked are almost impossible to tell apart by eye. For a family eating eggs at breakfast a few times a week, that savings repeats all year long without giving up any of the freshness or nutrition you're getting. 10. Equate hydrogen peroxide, the same antiseptic formula for a third of the price. Have you ever stood in the pharmacy aisle staring at 2 bottles of hydrogen peroxide, one a familiar name brand and one Equate, wondering where the difference actually is? The answer is usually nothing but the label. Both come in a 3% concentration, the same standard antiseptic formula used to clean up small cuts or rinse your mouth when needed. A 16-ounce bottle of Equate usually runs about $1, while the same size bottle from the familiar brand can run $3 or more depending on the store. Both bottles fizz up the same white bubbles when poured on a cotton ball, a sign that the oxidizing reaction with bacteria is happening exactly the way the standard pharmaceutical formula calls for. Plenty of families keep a bottle in the medicine cabinet and only use it a few times a year, so the savings on any one bottle is small, but it's pointless to skip when the results are exactly the same. For a basic medical product like this, paying extra for the name is nearly a wasted expense, and this is one of the easiest switches to store brand you can make without a second thought. But don't turn this video off yet, because the next item is something a lot of families buy every week without realizing they're overpaying for a frozen breakfast. 9. Great value frozen waffles, golden and buttery for a fraction of the Eggo price. On a rushed morning before work, the toaster pops up and you need a waffle that's crispy on the outside and soft in the middle. Classic Eggo used to be the default pick for a lot of families, but it usually costs about double what you'd pay for the same count in a box of Great Value. Toast both at the same time, and the golden brown color, the crisp edges, and the buttery smell when you cut one open are barely different. A box usually has 10 waffles, enough for a family of 4 to eat breakfast for about 3 days, with a toasting time of just 2 minutes in a standard toaster. Great Value's waffles still hold a deep grid pattern to keep syrup from running off the plate, something a lot of cheaper waffles don't manage as well. Some people have refrozen half a box after thawing it and found the waffles still crisp up fine on a second toasting, which isn't true of every frozen waffle out there. With a box priced well below the long-established brand, you still get a hot breakfast for the whole family without stressing over the weekend grocery bill. 8. Great Value oats, the same texture and nutrition for a lot less. Millions of people are so used to reaching for the familiar yellow Quaker container that they never think to try anything else. But set a spoonful of Great Value oats next to the name brand, and both are rolled from the same whole oat groats at the same thickness, and cook up to a nearly identical creamy texture. Fiber, protein, and calories per serving barely differ between the two, usually landing around 4 grams of fiber and 5 grams of protein per half cup dry. A 42-ounce container of Great Value usually runs about $2 cheaper than the same weight from the brand that's been advertised on television for decades. If you make overnight oats with almond milk, both brands soak up evenly and hold the same thickness after 8 hours in the fridge without getting mushy or watery. For a breakfast you eat year-round, switching to this cheaper oatmeal is one of the easiest ways to save money without changing anything about your family's meal. 7. Market-side Caesar salad. Kit crisp greens and dressing that taste like they came from a restaurant. You don't always have time to wash lettuce, toast croutons, and mix up dressing for a proper Caesar salad in the middle of a busy week. The Market Side kit solves that with pre-washed romaine that's still crisp, garlic croutons that stay crunchy in the bag instead of going soft, freshly shaved Parmesan instead of the powdery kind, and a dressing packet rich enough to coat the whole bowl without turning watery. A bag usually holds about 9 ounces of washed greens, enough for 2 to 3 servings, and the whole prep takes about 3 minutes from opening the bag to tossing it together. Compared to the pricier packaged salads from the familiar names in the produce section, this kit usually delivers a bolder, fresher flavor, close to what you'd order as an appetizer at a steakhouse. A lot of shoppers add sliced grilled chicken to turn it into a full lunch, and the total cost still comes in under what you'd pay for a similar salad ordered out. At a reasonable price for a quick meal that still feels a little upscale, this is one you can toss in the cart without overthinking it. You can see this list isn't over yet. If you're finding this useful, a like right now helps this video reach more people, and the next part might change the way you look at the canned food aisle for good. 6. Great Value Chunk Light Tuna, firmer and milder tasting than Starkist. Opening a can of tuna and finding liquid sloshing all over the plate, along with a strong fishy smell, is something plenty of people have run into with a few familiar brands on the shelf. Great Value Chunk Light Tuna in water comes out in firm, clearly flaked chunks instead of falling apart into mush, with a much milder taste than Starkist, a brand known for a strong flavor that not everyone actually enjoys. A standard 5-ounce can of Great Value usually runs about 40 cents cheaper than the same size can of Starkist, and once drained, the actual amount of tuna you get is about the same. Mixed with mayo for a sandwich or tossed over a salad, the flake still holds its texture instead of turning into powder. Some people have made tuna melts with both brands and noticed Great Value held on to more moisture after 5 minutes in a 350-degree oven. With a can priced well below the long-established brand, you're getting a convenient source of protein for lunch without giving up flavor. And for a lot of families who've done a side-by-side test, this one is close to a clear win. 5. Sam's Choice Thin Crust. Frozen pizza, crispier crust, and better melted cheese than delivery. On a lazy Friday night, a frozen pizza is usually the fallback, but most of them leave you with a soggy crust or cheese that melts unevenly. Sam's Choice. Thin crust goes against that expectation with a thin crust that bakes up crispy at the edges, a tomato sauce with real seasoning instead of tasting flat, and cheese that melts evenly from the center out to the rim. A 12-inch pizza usually bakes in about 12 to 15 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, enough for 2 people to eat a full meal or 3 people with a side salad. Compared to DiGiorno or California Pizza Kitchen, the overall flavor of Sam's Choice usually rates just as good or even a little better, especially in how crisp the crust stays 5 minutes after coming out of the oven without going soft again like some others do. Compared to ordering a pizza delivered, which usually runs $15 to $20 with delivery fees, this one costs about half that while still satisfying the whole family. This is one you can keep a few of in the freezer without worrying you're wasting money on a mediocre meal. 4. Sam's Choice. Angus beef patties, juicy and rich, taste like a restaurant burger. Frozen burgers usually fall into one of 2 camps, either dry and flavorless or expensive enough that you wonder why you didn't just go out to eat. Sam's Choice. Angus beef patties break both of those assumptions with a thick quarter-pound patty, a fat ratio that keeps it juicy on a cast iron pan or a charcoal grill, and a deep beefy flavor that doesn't need a lot of extra seasoning. On your first bite, the juice running out instead of the patty being dry is the clearest sign the meat-to-fat ratio is balanced right. Something a lot of cheaper frozen burgers skip on. A pack usually has 6 patties, enough for a small backyard cookout, and it only takes about 4 minutes per side on a hot grill to reach medium doneness while keeping the juices in. Compared to a burger from a steakhouse, which usually runs $12 to $15 a plate, the flavor here isn't far off, while the whole multi-pack costs about the same as a single restaurant meal. This is one worth keeping stocked for nights you want something good without leaving the house. Before we get to the last 3 items on our list of 13, there's one product a lot of people have poured money into a name brand for out of pure habit, and you're about to see why that's no longer necessary. 3. Great value. Greek yogurt, creamy and protein-packed enough to stop you from buying Chobani. Greek yogurt has always been tied to names like Chobani or Oikos, brands that built such a premium image that their prices sit well above the rest of the yogurt case. Great value. Greek yogurt, whether plain or vanilla, still holds the thick, creamy texture real Greek yogurt is known for, without turning runny or watery the way some cheaper versions have disappointed shoppers before. Protein per cup stays just as high as the pricier brands, usually around 15 grams for a 5.5-ounce cup, good for a quick breakfast or a post-workout snack. Taste testing the vanilla, the sweetness is balanced well without the sharp or artificial flavor found in some lower-priced options. A great value cup usually runs 50 cents to $1 cheaper than the same size Chobani, and if you buy a 4-pack, the savings show up even more clearly across a full week of breakfasts. With that kind of gap compared to the name brands, this is one of those items where plenty of people try it once and never go back to the old shelf again. 2. Sam's Choice Brioche Buns, softer and more subtly sweet than Pepperidge Farm. A good burger isn't just about the meat, it's also about the bun holding everything together, and that's exactly where Sam's Choice Brioche Buns show a clear difference. The texture is soft but still sturdy enough not to fall apart once it soaks up sauce, with a buttery richness and a light sweetness that feels closer to a bakery loaf than a packaged bun. Compared to Pepperidge Farm, one of the long-running and noticeably pricier bread brands, Sam's Choice Brioche is usually rated softer and more buttery once lightly toasted before you build the burger. A bag usually has 8 buns, enough for a family cookout without needing a second bag, and after 30 seconds on a dry skillet, the surface turns lightly golden and crisp while the inside stays soft. Beyond burgers, this bun can turn a chicken or egg sandwich in the morning into something that feels like it came from a coffee shop. At a price noticeably lower than that long-established bread brand, this is a small upgrade that makes a big difference to a family meal. And now for the item at the top of the list, one that makes even the most loyal premium brand shoppers take a second look in their cart. 1. Great value ice cream homemade vanilla, rich enough that people mistake it for Haagen-Dazs. There's a story that keeps getting shared by shoppers trying this ice cream for the first time. They were shocked it tasted better than Brioche, a long-running brand priced well above it. Great value. Homemade vanilla has a smooth, rich texture without the icy, grainy bits. Some cheaper ice creams tend to develop after a few days in the freezer. The vanilla flavor comes from a well-made formula without the harsh artificial sweetness, instead giving off a warm aroma that's closer to homemade ice cream than a mass-produced one. A half-gallon of great value costs under $3, while the same size from Brioche or Haagen-Dazs usually runs $5 to $7 depending on the store's sale. In some blind taste tests people ran at home, quite a few actually guessed this was Haagen-Dazs, one of the priciest ice cream brands out there, especially when paired with hot fudge and without seeing the packaging. Some people even leave it out of the freezer for 5 minutes before scooping to get the ideal softness, a small trick that makes it melt on your tongue just like a premium scoop shop treat. At under $3 for a large container, this isn't just a cheap dessert. It's an eating experience that goes well beyond its price tag, and it might be the most convincing item on this entire list. But not everything with the Walmart label is worth buying. There are 4 items that no matter how cheap they are, you should think twice about before tossing in your cart. And here's why. 1. Great value coffee. Coffee is one of the few products where the difference between brands really comes down to bean quality and roasting process, not just the packaging. Great value. Coffee usually comes out pretty flat, missing the layers of flavor longtime coffee drinkers are used to, and the aftertaste can sometimes turn a little sharp instead of smooth. At around $6 for a 30-ounce bag, the savings compared to a name brand roast isn't big enough to make up for the difference in your morning experience. Plenty of people have brewed both at the same water-to-coffee ratio and found great value needs almost 50% more grounds to reach the same strength, which pretty much erases the initial savings. If coffee is an important ritual in your day, this is one of those items worth sticking with the brand you already trust instead of switching to the cheaper option. 2. Great value cola. Soda is a product where the syrup formula and carbonation level make up almost the entire experience, and that's exactly where great value cola falls short. The sweetness tends to feel more artificial, and the carbonation goes flat faster after opening compared to the big-name sodas you're used to drinking. At around $1.50 for a 2-liter bottle, the difference isn't much compared to the name brand bottle, while the drinking experience falls well short. Some people have left both bottles in the fridge overnight and found the great value bottle noticeably flat after just 1 day open, while the name brand bottle still held its fizz better after 3 days. This is one of those rare cases where paying a little extra actually makes a real difference in the glass you drink every day. 3. Parents' Choice diapers. For parents, diapers aren't the place to gamble on savings, and that's exactly why Parents' Choice diapers land on this list. Plenty of parents have reported more overnight leaks compared to the bigger brands, and the material inside isn't as soft, which can irritate a baby's sensitive skin. At around $18 for a medium-sized pack, the savings compared to the name brand aren't enough to make up for the sleepless nights caused by a diaper that leaked through. Some parents have tried sizing up to fix the leaking, but ran into the same problem anyway, which points to the absorbent liner as the real issue rather than the size. And that's an important thing to know before buying in bulk. This is one product where quality and peace of mind should come before price. 4. Great value cereal. Breakfast cereal sounds simple, but how crisp it stays and how well it holds its texture after you pour on milk is what actually decides how breakfast goes for the whole family. Great value. Cereal usually has uneven crispness from piece to piece within the same box, and it turns soggy, especially fast, just a few minutes after hitting the milk, which takes the fun out of breakfast. At around $3 a box, the savings isn't enough to make up for your kid eating half a bowl and giving up because the cereal's gone limp. Plenty of parents have tried pouring cold milk right before eating instead of letting it sit on the table. And while that helps a little, the texture still doesn't hold up as long as the name brand version of the same cereal. This is one item where a lot of families, after trying it, go right back to the brand they know, even at a slightly higher price. Looking back over today's whole list, from eggs and cheese to paper towels, all the way to the burger buns and that final tub of vanilla ice cream, it's pretty clear the name printed on the package doesn't always match what's actually inside. Smart shopping doesn't mean always grabbing the cheapest thing. It means knowing exactly when Walmart's store brand really matches or beats the name brand, and when you should stick with what you already trust, like with coffee or diapers. Out of the 13 items you just saw, which one surprised you the most? And will you be switching to the store brand version on your next shopping trip? Leave a comment and let us know what you think.